One. Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I got one of my favorite topics that we're going to be talking about today. And I have a question that you're going to be like, on the surface, you're going to be like, yes. And then you're going to rethink your strategy as we unpack this topic today. So here's your question. Do you or your company have a sales strategy? And I get to travel around the country and ask some of these questions. And one of the biggest sales strategies that I've heard is hope. And hope is not a sales strategy, as we're going to find out today. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Leighann Lovely. How are you today?
I'm doing great, and thank you so much for having me. Inviting me to talk with you today about sales because this is a topic that I absolutely love.
Absolutely. Two of us that could sit and talk about it all day. So we'll do our best to keep it within about 40 minutes. But you're the founder and CEO of a company called Love Your Sales. So fill us in on what Love Your Sales is.
Yeah, we are a sales consulting company that works with our clients in a variety of ways. Mainly, we come in to help create that strategy around, what's working, what's not working, and then figuring out the path from point A to point B, and then point C, because it's not a straight narrow, line from, where you are to finding that sweet spot in success. And we also assist with implementing tools, marketing campaigns, and a variety of other things along that journey.
Sure. And I can guess, Leanne, that there's like when you ask people what's not working, I mean, it's got to kind of come down to a couple buckets, right? I'm not closing enough. I'm not calling on enough people. I mean, there's got to be a few things. Is there something as we jump in today? Is there some like overarching one that normally you see show up nine times out of 10? Is there one that's a true winner when it comes to things that aren't working, or is it a plethora of different things that you see?
Throughout my career, it's changed so much. I mean, but right now in today's world, it's getting in front of people and really
Yeah,
being able to have those conversations to begin with. And we go back, we can network and network and network all day long, but it depends sometimes on, well, what are you selling? Are you selling to enterprise businesses? Are you selling? But ultimately, it comes down to, how do I get in front of more people who are interested in talking about the product that I have to sell? And
sure.
that, uh, how do you get in front of more
Yeah,
people
right.
in
Sure.
your area of interest, right? And so
Right.
that's really it comes down to that. And then there's obviously a whole plethora, as you said,
Yeah.
of other nuances within that. Um, but today people are being so bombarded with so much information that it's hard to be the one that they go, "Oh, that one's
Sure.
interesting."
Right. Well, and we're all consumers on that end as well, right? So we know what it's like to go out and look for a car and then be bombarded by people, for the next day, week, or month until that purchase decision's made. But like you mentioned, I want to kind of start there. I mean, when you say we want to get in front of more people, when I started this thing in my sales career, 100 years ago, there were two choices. It was either, pick up the phone or go knock on their door, right?
Right.
Those were your two choices. And all of a sudden now there's all these other ways that we can do that. I feel like people have gotten away from that in-person type of thing. Like Zoom is about as close as it gets. And it's just, I don't know, have you seen that too, where people are kind of either discouraged away from in-person stuff, or what are your thoughts on that?
I see a lot of people coming back and wanting to be around other people, but they found a different way. Like, oh, you mean I can not answer my phone for
Right?
this length of time and things still, you know, things are still moving forward. And again, I hate to keep referencing, we can beat this dead horse, but during the pandemic, everybody stopped being in the office. They stopped answering their phones on a regular basis. It was picking up, letting it go to voicemail, getting the message. We
Yep.
weren't in person. We were doing Zoom, and they're like, I just want to continue to do it this way. Like it
Right.
worked. We still
Yeah.
did business. Great, it
Yeah.
worked. But now we
Doesn't work
have
forever, right?
correct. Nothing works forever. We have to continue, evolve, and pivot.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point. So, again, for people listening today, I asked the question about, do you have a sales strategy or does your company? And a lot of people think that their sales strategy is just, it's so simple. You do this or that. And it seems to be where there's a lot more involved in it. And so I just, I think strategy is a great word. Does your company have a sales plan? Yeah, I go out and knock on doors, or yeah, I call 250 people a day, or I spend 5 hours a day on LinkedIn, whatever that is. And we'll unpack that in the second part of the show. But for people listening that don't know you, why don't you fill us in on your journey? Because like I shared with you before we jumped on, Leighann, there's a lot of people listening around the world right now that are uh, envious of what we do. They have a desire to own their own company. They want to be an entrepreneur, and they're stuck in corporate America or corporate Germany or corporate whatever, where it's one of those things where you have to make that leap. And I know that you started in corporate America. So kind of fill us in on what your journey looked like from corporate America transitioning into owning your own business.
Yeah, so a lot of those who know me in my network or have known me from a previous lifetime know that I started actually in in HR. I started in corporate HR, well, actually in recruiting, and then was going to school for corporate HR. And everybody's like, "Wow, how does a corporate HR lady turn salesperson?" Um,
Those are oxymorons, right? That's like a jumbo shrimp, right?
right, exactly. So, and I loved what I was doing, helping people, but during the time that I was in corporate HR, the world changed. This was around, the 2008 era, and things drastically changed, and I became very unhappy. Basically being the person that everybody hated, when in my heart
Yeah,
of hearts, I wanted to help people.
yeah,
And it was one of those decisions of, okay, well, what do I do from here? Where do I use my skills? And so I went into, the staffing world and eventually was like, I want to do sales in staffing. I understand HR, I understand the staffing world, I understand all of the nuances that go along with that. So I took a risk and jumped into my first sales role, which was selling makeup and cleaning products at a Sam's Club. And quickly I was picked up by an owner who I pitched there. And that's how I cut my teeth in sales.
wow,
Um, right. And I ended up working, at his company selling time clock systems and the software behind it. And it was a perfect match because in order to implement, time and attendance software, you have to understand the HR rules behind the scenes.
sure,
Now, fast forward, I've built up huge credibility in what I do as a salesperson, and I was working at a company um, that they churn and burn a lot of salespeople. I didn't know
yeah,
that when I started.
sure,
Um, and my boss had told me one day, you've paid for your seat for the next year. And then I found myself out the door the next day going, wait a second, wait. I thought everything was great. I was been told
yeah,
and I was without a job. And
yeah,
I called a dear friend of mine and said, I don't have a job. And he's like, What? What are you talking about? And within 24 hours, actually, I had two job offers on the table. And I kind of went, well, why don't I just do, one of them wouldn't have sustained my salary. Um,
sure.
the other one was, due on your own time. And I thought, well, I'll just do both of them.
There you go.
And and then I was at a mastermind networking group that I was part of at the time. And I said, could this be like a job, like a real, could I make a business out of this? Like if you hired me as a fractional salesperson to be your consultant and then to sell for you, just do the
Sure.
smile dial. Would you be interested? And like half the people in the room went, well, yeah, I'd hire you to do my sales. And I'm like,
Sure.
oh, I think I have a concept growing here.
Sure.
Um, and so in a very short period of time, all of a sudden I had little jobs coming in, people calling me saying, hey, can you help with this? Can you help with this? And I was like, wow. And then lo and behold, a good friend of mine had been working on starting his own business. Um, and he and I became strategic partners. And right there, that is my CRM tool that I help in the process for companies that need to get really hyper organized to be able to understand their marketing, be able to understand their sales, are able to pull in other aspects of their operations into the
Sure.
system. And that's how I ended up in, entrepreneurship. It was something I'd always dreamed of. Don't get me wrong. This is not something where
Okay.
I was like, oh, one day I'm just going to be an entrepreneur. Um, and always at one time thought like I want to own my own business. I just didn't know how to get in there, didn't know how to
Yeah.
do it.
Yep.
Um, and so it just kind of all came together. And again,
Sure.
it's been a rocky, emotional roller coaster of the last 2.5 years of running and owning my own business,
Right.
but I wouldn't change it.
Sure. Well, and that's the funny thing is like, so many people are not aware of the challenge that's going to happen. And I always tell people every time we talk about this, there's no right or wrong way to do it. Some people quit their job and start a new, their own business the next day. Some people parallel for a long time and before they jump off. So again, we're not here advocating a right or wrong. We just want to share with people around the world that in this situation that there are a variety of people. In this case, Leighann was going down the HR road, going down the recruiting road, elevating her career, and then some big tragic event happened, job loss. And then it's comforting to know that two people wanted to hire you. So that's kind of cool. Like you have that. And then it's like, what about this? And what about that? So um, you knew you wanted to own your own business, you said, but did you know where it was? Did you have a passion, or it's just the passion was owning your own business and then whatever happens, happens type of
Yeah,
thing?
it was strange because I had gone on a girls' trip and I was like, I just don't know what I want to do yet. Like, I want to run my own business. It'll be fun.
Yeah, there
And it
you
is.
go.
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. It is fun sometimes. But it's not exactly the word that I would typically use to
Right. Yep.
but and I had been talking to them about, I'd really love to be able to do this. I just don't know where to begin. I don't know how to
Sure.
start. And when you're kicked off the ledge,
Yeah.
you, you just do it.
Right.
It's just one of those things that's like all of a sudden. So no, I didn't know where I was gonna land. I didn't know what I knew was that I had a unique skill that two people jumped up and said, "Yeah, I want you to do this for me."
Sure. Yep.
And I went, "Oh, okay." And I shouldn't say unique. I am a hardcore cold caller, willing to be on the phones, willing to chase people, willing to do what I need to do in order to be the person that is in front of them.
Yeah.
Um, and it's always been what I've done in my career. There are a ton of books out there that I've read, and I'm like, oh, like I want to do that's fun. So I love the chase. I get bored
Right.
if it's easy to sell.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point here, and I want the people listening, especially from the sales world, to really get this, is that this is a personality thing. There are personalities that are designed to sell, and then there are personalities that aren't designed to sell. We do a disc assessment for sales professionals. I can tell you how good their closing is going to be, all the different components. But I think you brought up this thing of tenacity, and like there are certain people in the world. I run across these in my travels as well. I had one guy that was like at a trade show, Leanne, and came up to him after, and I said, "So how'd you do? You know, how was your weekend?" And he's like, "Oh," I'm like, "How many people did you contact? How many names? Whatever." There was, whatever his metrics was, and this individual's like, "Oh, I don't take names at a trade show," and I'm just like, "What?" I mean, he's like, "Yeah, if they want me, they'll call me." So you have that end, this ultra passive thing, where that's a side of the sales world. And then the other side is where they're so aggressive, where they're like sitting in your driveway, waiting for you to come home, and they're stalking you, right? And people get nervous about that. So a lot of people listening are either in one of those camps. And I've been learning and working in the middle camp where you're more assertive, where
Mhm.
you're able to do what you need to do for the customer, follow up as needed. So did the tenacity come natural for you, or was it something that you learned, or how did that happen for you?
I think it's just a natural, I was a sports in high school. I was an athlete, and I think that a lot of people are athletes and or into tendency to have more of that tenacity with them, that drive, that desire to win and to and again, I'm not one of those people like, oh, I didn't win, um,
Yeah,
but I'm one of those people who until you say no to me, I'm gonna I'll keep following up with you. I'll
sure.
keep to, and early on in a podcast that I was on, somebody said the greatest thing in the world is a yes. The second greatest thing in the world is a no. It is in sales, it is the unknown or the person who's like, call me back in a month. And then
Yeah,
we'll continue to do that and do that and do that. And it's like, look, if you feel bad about saying no to me,
yeah,
don't. Like
right.
if you don't want my product, just tell me no, because then I can move on, you can move on, and we'll have
Yeah,
happy lives.
yeah,
Don't,
yep. No,
don't
and
lead
so
me
many
on.
people are so afraid of that no because they're feeling, if I tell you no, if you call me and say, "Are you interested in X, whatever X is?" And I say, "Thanks, Leanne, but I'm not interested." People feel like now's it's going to get, the pressure's going to get elevated. Something's going to happen that's like negative for me, the buyer, the prospect, right? And I'm in the same camp that you are. I would much rather get a no than a think it over, because the think it overs are, I always envision this sales pipeline, and the think it overs are all around the perimeter, just really mucking up the water for the rest of the people that are interested. So, is that a hard concept for your clients when you're working with them? It seems hard for people to let go of a sale. And I'm just curious if, even though it's not a sale, it's a think it over, and really at the end of the day, it's really a no, they're just afraid to tell you. I mean, generally, sometimes there's exceptions, but do you find people in your travels that have a hard time letting go to certain sales, especially like the think it overs?
Are you, and you're talking about the who's letting it go? The salesperson or
No, like, is it hard for the salesperson to just kind of close the file because,
oh.
hey, think it over, they might buy someday, type of thing? It
So
seems like the salespeople just can't let it go.
and what and I see that a lot. And here's and I train on different, or not train, I should say I educate on different things. Like that think it over person, they're if they continue to answer the phone and communicate with you, they
Yeah,
can go onto a passive newsletter list, or they can go onto
sure.
where you're not burning your or spinning your wheels.
Yeah,
You're putting them on a passive like list, and
yep,
you're still in front of them.
yeah,
But the salesperson who needs to stay on revenue generating tasks needs to move on.
yeah,
They need to start focusing on the people who are going to buy from them. But the person who's still answering the phone and saying, call me in a month, okay, I'm going to stop calling you in a month. I'm going to put you on a quick, little newsletter that we have that goes out every quarter or every, so that the name of my company is still in front of you. So that
yeah,
if and when one day you decide that you want to buy from me, you'll
right.
still have my contact information. You'll still think of me. But that direct salesperson who every minute of their day counts. They can't spend time looking at cats. They need to stay in revenue generating tasks, right?
Right. Yep.
Making the phone calls to the people who are actually engaging and having conversations with them. They need to move on. And yes, there are salespeople out there that I have worked with that just can't. They analyze it to death of what did I do
Yep.
wrong? What am I doing wrong? It's like sales is a
Yep.
numbers game. You could
Yep.
call 100 people and only get 10 interested, and then out of those 10, only get one to buy.
Sure.
I mean, it all depends. Again, if you're selling a
Sure.
candy bar, that obviously is going to be a completely different,
Right.
you know,
Yep. No, absolutely. Well, and I think it's interesting, and as we're going to take our first break after this, but I think it's interesting that last I looked, and this could have changed, but last I looked, and it's been a while, there were only two colleges that were offering sales as an actual, a degree. And I might be more now, but when you think about how many people in the US, just focus on the US economy, how many people are in sales in some capacity, but yet there's no training for it. It's just crazy to me how few people, they basically say, "Hey, you can talk to people. You'd be a good sales guy. Hey, congratulations, you're now in sales." I mean, that's
right.
like that's the onboarding of it, right? So I'm just curious on your end, do you guys, I mean, do you invest a ton of time helping people with the process of sales and the strategies? Is that where you tend to jump in?
Typically, we come into some more mature or and smaller organizations.
Okay.
So they typically have an idea of what they want to do. They typically have an idea, they're so and then it's tweaking, figuring out, okay, what are you doing? Who are you selling to? Do you understand your value prop? Do you understand, what problems you're solving? And often, and I've worked too sometimes with brand new startup organizations where they don't even know that. And I do with them what's called Are You Sales Ready? First, it's really just a brief, like, okay, here's your online presence. Here's your product. Like, are you even ready to go to market with this product so that people understand
Right.
who you are and what you're selling? Because people are not going to buy if they're confused.
Yeah.
And so I work with a lot of clients who, they have an established, typically product. Um, However, I have worked with others that are like they're brand new too, and they don't even know what they don't know in order
Sure.
to get going. And then
Sure.
we work on that strategy of what do we do first? How do we begin? How do we break into the market?
Yeah. There's a lot there. And again, retail where you're standing waiting for someone to come to you. I was like in my late teens, early 20s, whatever, somewhere late teens where I was selling shoes in a local mall. And all I could do, it was so painful because like on a Monday in January, where it was the mall opened at 10 and it wouldn't be till 1 or 2 until you saw your first person walk in. I mean, it was just so different than outside sales where you can control your future and you can go and do as much or as little as you want. So when you hear sales, just for the listener, there's so many different things that encompass that. So,
Right.
um, it just is crazy. But we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to get into some of these sales strategies with you, Leighann. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm honored to be hanging out with Leighann Lovely, the founder and CEO of Love Your Sales. And so fill us in a little bit on what, so let's think of the person listening. We'll take three different types. The first person is just starting out in sales, less than a year under their belt. And they're like, they don't know what they don't know. They didn't get much training from their company. I notice a lot of companies do a lot of product training, but then it's like delivering that message. They don't talk about listening skills or good questioning, communication. We speak on that all over the country, and it's crazy when people come up to me and I ask them, how much training have you gotten in this? And they're like, they have that deer in the headlights look. So for the person just starting out, where do you kind of start with them? What are some key things that you help them and encourage them to do and to be more aware of in their journey?
Yeah. The number one thing is obviously if they've gone through the product knowledge, the product understanding, they understand that, right? But
Right.
then it comes down to how are you spending your time every day? And that's
Yeah.
different. So first we figure out exactly how are you spending your time every single day? And it's broken down differently depending on industry because each industry is absolutely different. Like you're not going to find certain industries out networking. They just don't do it.
Right.
Um, and then it's really breaking that out. It's breaking that down and then making sure that they are splitting up their time appropriately based on the tasks that they're doing. I hear a lot of people say, cold calling is dead. It's never going to be dead.
Yeah.
Um, because just because you meet somebody at a networking meeting doesn't mean that you don't have to eventually pick up the phone and call them. And there are people who don't go to networking meetings, so you are always going to have to spend a certain amount of time calling them. Um, and then we talk about those activities. How much time are you spending making phone calls? How much time are you spending on social, reaching out to the people who are actually on social? And now this is really the basic for the person who
Yeah.
you and then
Just start. Yep.
how much time are you spending at networking meetings? And then creating an actual plan to for their specific product, their specific company, where their time should be spent and then from that tracking how many appointments they're scheduled or they're setting. And again, that also comes down to industry. Is your industry average 10 appointments a week? Is your industry average 5 appointments a week? And it's across the board. I've worked with
Yeah.
some industries where it's, well, you should be setting at least 15 appointments a week. Okay, great.
Yep.
And of
Wow.
those appointments, what are you expecting out of them? So
Sure.
it's a lot of it is really diving into those industry specifics and then creating an actual plan on the calendar
Right.
because people are like, "Oh, I've got a plan," and I'm like, "Okay, good, great, show it to me."
Yep.
Oh, well, I mean, it's in
It's
my
up here.
head.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I
Okay,
think calendar is a huge piece, right? I mean, if you're listening for anybody in the beginner, medium, or advanced, if any of you are listening that aren't really like so protective of your calendar and are watching that, I mean, I do it as simple as pay time and no pay time because there's time that you get paid for, and then there's time that you don't get paid for. If you're a straight commission salesperson, or you're a sales professional where there's commission involved, you have the opportunity to talk to whomever you want. And I'd much rather talk to somebody that can buy something. You talked about strategic partners. I think those are really important. Before the break, you talked
hmm
about that. And again, there's really good things, but I've seen a lot of people that, are spending all this time updating their Facebook, updating LinkedIn, and blah blah blah. And I'm not saying it's good or bad, but boy, if you take a look at your week and really identify what is pay time or no pay time or whatever the words are, whatever, look at those activities because if your activities don't align with what your goals are, it's like a chiropractor that lives in one city and then drives 100 miles to go to a different state for a networking event. I mean, that'd be like, and no one on this call would do that, right? Because
right.
it's like that makes no sense. But yet we spend so many hours of our day doing call reports or filling out paperwork or polishing our some of our profiles. So I think the calendar, like you said, is just so important when it comes to that. So
And
for that, oh, go ahead.
it's also the CRM. If you are
Okay.
working for a company that has a CRM, you need to be utilizing that. And here's why. Because so many salespeople are like, oh, I've got it on paper, I've got it on here, and I've got it on. And it's like, no, no. Like I can look into my CRM and go back 2 years to a person that I had a conversation with that mentioned, oh, this isn't a good time for me. My daughter's birthday is this weekend and it's time
Yeah.
stamped. I could
Yeah.
call her today and say, oh, how's your daughter doing? What is she, 7 now? You had mentioned, because I can, and that little tiny thing right there, she's going to go, oh my God, how did you remember that?
Right.
Some people might
Yeah.
find it, but
I
you
was
have
gonna
to
say
do it.
some people are like creeped out right now
Right.
because it's like, oh my gosh,
But
Leanne
I,
knows what my kid's birthday was.
Right, but I track everything. Like, oh, I'll be on vacation for the next 2 weeks. Okay, great. And then when I call them back, I'll ask them, how was your trip to Hawaii? How did you enjoy yourself? Blah, blah. And people are like, oh my God, it was so amazing. People love to talk about themselves. So have a topic that they're willing to talk about. Your
Right.
CRM right there is gold. It's apps, not to mention you can put your reminders in there of when
Yep.
somebody says, call me back in 4 months. If you've got that written on a piece of paper, how are you going to remember to where to look on there, when to call
Right.
them?
Yep.
You're utilize the tools that you have the way they're supposed to be utilized and set up, and you
Yep.
will be that much more successful. And again, I absolutely know everybody right now is like, salespeople are like, oh, the CRM, I have to go and log
Yeah.
this in. When I was given, and I've actually told, I had a company I interviewed with, and they're like, oh, we're going to be implementing a CRM. And I'm like, you don't have one? They're like, no, not right now. And I was like, I'm not interested. I'm
Yeah.
not interested in working for you because I will be a mess.
Yeah.
And trust me, there was times in my career where, the bosses are like, well, I didn't see that entered in the CRM. And I'm like, the CRM.
Yeah.
No,
I hear you.
it is absolutely the thing that has made me organized and successful is when I have the notes somewhere.
Well, and that's the hard thing because, when you say CRM, yeah, the hair on the back of my neck, kind of like, oh, because you know what? I think of, and again, I'm not, we don't promote it or deny anybody, but somebody like Salesforce in my mind, Salesforce is like, I don't need to know all 100 of these, the prospect's address, the prospect's wife's name, wife's birth. This is what, again, an uneducated CRM person start thinking like, hey, I want to go sell something. And it's either, do I want to fill something in on the CRM or do I want to sell something, right? In a black and white world that I live in, that's what I start thinking about. So, for the person that's listening that shares that view, is there like a middle ground of like, hey, you don't have to necessarily give everything, but you give some important, pertinent information? Is there a middle ground there somewhere?
Like in a CRM or in
Yeah.
a,
Yeah,
yeah,
just in a CRM.
well, so I have, um, sorry, I have a bug flying around me.
That's all right.
Sorry,
It is
I can,
summer, so
I
you're
can
good.
hear it buzzing in my, so
We can't hear it, so you're safe.
the proper CRM,
Hmm.
like Salesforce it's beautiful for really, really large companies, right? But you when you if you're a company and you're thinking about implementing a CRM, one, you want to make sure that it is functional and easy for your salespeople. Otherwise, they are going to make the face and balk at it the same way I was just doing that, right?
Yep.
I the one that I utilize, the one that I implement and set up for my clients, with my strategic partner, not only does it have a credit card, a business card scanner app that I can literally meet somebody, scan their card, and it goes
Sure.
directly into my CRM. I can make a note right there and a
Yep.
task for myself to follow up at a later time.
Okay.
Um, but it's customizable, completely customizable. Sit down with your sales team, find out what functions they want to use, make it easy for them, understanding that yes, there's tracking in the back end that a lot of companies want. But if you're working with your sales team on what did they need, how did they want to utilize it, and set it up so that when they're in the field, when they're at their desk, when they're at home, that they can easily access that information for the purpose of obviously working.
Sure.
um, it is more likely that they're going to use that. And ours is, I mean, I can set it up so you're just entering in the first name, last name, email, and phone number, and
Right.
we can pare it down so that you're not seeing all the rest of the crap.
Yeah.
But
Well, that would be great. And then next step, right? Again, if you leave a situation and don't have a next step, it's kind of senseless to even really be in that situation because, when you meet somebody, hey, we should get together sometime, is like that's like the word to me. That's like as bad as I got to think this over, right? It's like, well, nothing happened. So I'm always the guy that's like, hey, what does next Tuesday for lunch look like? Or do you have your calendar with you? I'm that, for me, that's just how I got into that early on. And it just seems to work as opposed to, give me a call sometime or we should get together type of stuff. It's like, yeah, I appreciate that, but there's got to be some intentionality there.
and with the app of our CRM, you can schedule on your calendar
Oh,
through
that's
the
cool. Yeah,
CRM right there.
cool. Yep.
It's connected to, it's got a two-way sync to your calendar
Sure.
and to your email
Sure.
so that all of that information is tracked. So
Okay.
I could be sitting with somebody and they could say, "Hey, when are you available?" I could pull up a calendar link and email it to them. I could pull up my actual calendar and schedule an appointment with them. And when I do that, their information automatically gets uploaded into my
Sure.
CRM. So there's
Cool.
not double entry,
Yeah.
which is
So
every salesperson's nightmare, right?
yes, triple entry. Yeah, I thought I said put this in like 15 times already, How many times have we written somebody's name out? But so for
Right.
the beginner listener, again, the beginner sales professional, think about this from a time perspective,
Mhm.
and which is a great spot. As we transition to the intermediate, somebody that's been in for, 1 to 5 years in sales, those are probably the most dangerous because they feel like they know it all and they know just enough to be dangerous type of thing. What words of wisdom, what would you share with somebody in that 1 to 5 range? What should they be looking for? What are some tactics, that now that I kind of have a handle on my schedule, I have a handle on my product. What's next then at that spot, do you think, Leighann?
Yeah, as you have now ironed out your process and you're starting to get traction and you're building your book of business, one of the most important things is to really roll in those strategic partners. So
Okay.
now you're bringing in that business, you're actually making a headway, rolling in those strategic partners because you should at this point have regular, bookings coming on your calendar. You should, by this time, if you've been a year or 2 years in at a company, you should
Yep.
have regular bookings from the activity that you've already been doing.
Sure.
And
Okay.
so now you're going to be able to roll in meetings with strategic partners, actually making inroads with other organizations that are working in the same hemisphere as you, right?
Yep.
And that's where you really get, you know, like however, you need to make yourself you need to I don't want to say make yourself. You need to prove to those networks, to the people you are already working with, that you are the subject matter expert in your industry and
Yep.
that you bring and you add value to them. And that is done by consistency and always giving before you expect to get. I hate, I have, and I'm sure, Dave, you've done this, you've had this happen where somebody's like, hey, let's do a one-on-one. And you're like, okay, let's do that. And then you sit down for coffee or for lunch, and all they do the whole time is pitch you. And you're
Yeah. I know, right?
like,
And you gotta buy, and you gotta buy on top of it. Usually it's like, oh my God, because they're so unaware. I had one guy once, Leanne, at a networking event. I tell this story. Guy gave me I never met him before, don't know who he is. If he was on my show, I couldn't even tell. But I and don't even remember who it was. But the guy walked up to me at an event with a half inch of his business cards, introduced himself to me, and said, "Hey, would you mind handing these out to your friends?" And I'm like, dude, I'm like, I don't even know what I said. I probably said sure and threw them in the garbage. But it's like, I don't know you. I don't trust you. I'm not gonna do this for you. I mean, just so really for that intermediate type of salesperson, remember others first, because in that first
Right.
spot, I think you're spending so much time trying to get your feet about you.
Mhm.
Once you have your feet, just remember, lead with helping them.
Right.
Oh man, I love when I meet with people and they're like, who do you need meet, who do you need to meet? Or how can I help you, rather than people sitting down and going, this is my problem. Now, as a coach and a sales trainer and that sort of stuff, it's totally a little bit different. But just think in general, when you're meeting with somebody that you want to network with, start with, hey, how can I help you? I think that's great. That's great advice, Leanne. Thank you. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing
Well,
that.
and somebody once told me, like, don't you hate when you get pitch slapped? And I'm like,
Yeah, right.
yes, that is
Yeah,
the
I love
word.
that. Yep, that is it. Because
That
what
is
do
the
you
word.
do? I mean, it's like you're at the mall, right? And you're walking down the mall, and then there's a kiosk in there, and as soon as you catch eyes, oh my gosh, you're lured in, and
Right.
whether it's to clean your gutters or it's some kind of new face soap or whatever, it's like I don't care. I'm always like just like this,
I had,
trying
I,
to just
I
get
was
through the mall.
I was trying to wave one of them off once. She was selling some type of, makeup or not
Yeah.
skin cream. And I was trying
Yep.
to wave her off like, no, I'm not interested. And she literally looked at me and says, so you don't care about your skin then?
There you go. Oh,
I
can't
was like,
wait to buy something from her, man. That's
right.
awesome. Right? Oh, that did it. Yeah, I do care. Please let me take my afternoon. So that's awesome. Well, as we start to land the plane, I want to talk also about the advanced group, because there are going to be some sales professionals, Leanne, listening that are tenured. They've been in this for a while. Um, two words that pop into my mind are like cross sell and upsell. I think is something. And also, I think about not forgetting about your existing clients. But those are what come to my mind. Is there anything else on that end that you
You
would have as some, words of wisdom to the experts that are listening?
remember to be humble. We get successful and we get really great at what we do. You got to remember to be humble and have humility
Yeah.
because again, people don't buy from people they don't like. And
Yep.
I have found that even I have misstepped where it's where you all of a sudden, you're like, well, I'm really great at this. Everybody, people like to buy from me and blah, blah, blah. And you all of a sudden you're stepping over your own damn tongue because you're just so used to the same pitch or and you miss things and you have to, you got to remember to, remember where you came from, I guess
Yeah.
is
Yep.
but yeah, I mean, as you obviously as you've become more seasoned, upselling, cross-selling, which is always a fun one. But humility is the number one thing that I think that more seasoned people and the necessity and cold calling does not go away just because you're a seasoned. You may spend a heck of a lot less time doing it because now you've built a community of people, of, network of people who remember you, refer to you. What you do today will affect you in 30 days, in 60
Yep.
days, in 90 days. And I have
Cool.
seen a lot of seasoned people like all of a sudden go, God, I just can't sell anything right now. And it's like, well, what are you
Yeah.
doing right now?
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing what I've always done. Okay, explain that to me.
Yeah.
And often I will hear, oh, well, I don't really cold call anymore.
Yep.
But and not at all? Well, no, because
Yeah.
I mean I just get referred. It's like, that's
Yep.
why your success is starting to, taper
Right.
off.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. So to recap, for the beginner, think of your time, think of the CRM. For the intermediate uh, sales professional, think about now other people and how you can, be a positive impact in their success. And then for the seasoned professional, think about staying humble. Think about, trying to still put other people first. But again, I had one more story. This is at the same event. Oddly enough, a guy comes up to me, and everybody's got their name tags on. So you have your name, first name, last name, and company name. His just said, I can't remember his name. It just was his first name, and I'm like, so. I'll say Tom. So Tom, so like, what's your last name and what company? Oh, everybody knows me here. And I'm just like, whoa, it's just like you just didn't. I couldn't get away quick enough. So
Mhm.
again, I think that humility is a really a great spot. So, one last question before I let you go is what would your tip of the day be today, Leighann, for somebody listening? Maybe it's something that you want to reiterate that we already talked about. Maybe it's something that's burning inside you that needs to get out. But what would your tip of the day be today?
Um, I had one and I completely forgot it. As an entrepreneur, and this goes to sales as well as, being an entrepreneur, which I
Sure,
think are two important things because when you become an entrepreneur, you become everything. You are selling, and so one of the number one things that I run into working with entrepreneurs who are new to their business, you are everything and you know everything about what you do, what you sell, your product, and that can sometimes be hindrance to your ability to sell it.
hmm
So my advice is to work with somebody such as myself or such as Dave to sit down and help them create your initial 30-second pitch, your initial proposal and they don't have to help you create it, but to review it. And
sure,
he,
yep,
and here's why. You know it so well that sometimes you people get too high level in their own product
yep,
and it becomes jumbled and jargoned when you try to explain to other. And I think entrepreneurs especially of that have trouble. Don't be afraid to ask other people, and this goes for any salesperson, like,
right,
hey, here's my 30-second pitch. When I meet somebody, what do you think of it?
right.
Be willing to take constructive criticism. You will never level up if you can't.
That's
I do.
awesome.
I still do. I every day.
Well, and whether it's a consultant like Leanne or I, or it's a peer-to-peer group, or it's some kind of trusted advisor, some outside influence needs to really look at your sales journey, your sales path, your process, whatever you call it, because we all have blind spots. I'm working on my next book called Business Blind Spots, and we don't know what we don't know, so we just make the assumption that everything is good. And that's where I think it's so helpful to have other people's eyes on our processes and stuff, which is really a great spot for me to share with the or have you share with the group. If people do want to connect with you, Leanne, if they want to learn more about Love Your Sales, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm all over LinkedIn. They can reach out to me on my website, which is loveyoursales.com. And then my email is Leighann, and it's spelled Leighann. My parents wanted to torture me, so they made it really hard to.
Yeah.
I'm just
And
kidding.
then all of us
Um,
that have to say it.
right, right. Is that
Uh,
Leighann? So it's my first name at loveyoursales.com. You can reach out to me there, but I'd love to hear from anybody. I'm always open to a conversation and love to talk.
Absolutely. And again, I think that it's easy to put this in the I'm not going to call because I don't need help file, which is fine. You just can't get mad at Leanne or I because we're here offering, Leanne says, hey, let me look at what's going on in your world. Let me help you. It's just so powerful to have another person's perspective. None of us think twice if we think we broke our arm. None of us self assess. None of us try to band-aid it ourselves. We go right to the emergency room and we get the professionals to take care of it. Your career, your journey, your company is the exact same scenario as don't self-assess all the time. Most of it you can do yourself, but there's times where if you're struggling with sales, if you're struggling making calls, if you're not hitting quota, if you're frustrated, if you're staying up at night with, some of these things that aren't working, why not have somebody come alongside and help? And that's what Leanne does. That's what Love Your Sales does. And I just wanted to make sure that we had that there because I listen to podcasts and there's times where I'm like, man, I got to reach out to this person to learn more because they've uncovered and identified something that I'm really struggling with. So hopefully somebody today, hopefully, actually, you know what, I retract that. Hopefully nobody has any sales problems. Hopefully everybody's crushing their sales. But if you're not, if you want to get better, that's again why Love Your Sales is here.
Hmm.
Reach out to Leighann on LinkedIn or go to loveyoursales.com and she'll be happy to help. So thank you so much for hanging out with us today. And did the water go down the wrong pipe? You okay? You look like you're struggling. So do I call 911 or what here? You all right?
My allergies are so bad.
Oh, okay. There you go. Wow. Well, we are in the middle of summer, so but I appreciate. Sorry. Well, I'll talk. I'll take over here for the minute. So, but again, like we always say, rather than jump into your next podcast, rather than jump into your next event, really take a minute and think about what was mentioned today, and think of one or two takeaways that you can actually implement into your day, into your sales routine right now. Maybe it's the time, maybe it's putting others first, maybe it's the humility, some of the other things, CRM, we talked about a bunch of stuff. So thank you so much, Leighann, for hanging out with us. Thank you for your wisdom. And what's the status? One last question. What's the status on your podcast?
Yeah, my podcast will be back up and running, probably within about a month.
Okay.
Um, but
Well,
you'll be able to get some sales tips and tricks there as well on the Love Your Sales podcast.
awesome. So Love Your Sales podcast, wherever you watch and or listen to your podcasts. There's past seasons and then she's coming back for some more. So again, thank you so much for hanging out. And we could talk about this all day, but I got to make sure you get back on the phone and make some sales. So
Yes.
thank you for hanging out with us and appreciate all your help.
Thank you so much for having me. This was an awesome conversation.